A good financial specialist can earn 30 or even 50,000 zlotys a month. But is working in finance at a big corporation just about Excel math or accounting, or is there much more to the job? You'll find out all about this in today's episode, so stay with us until the very end.
The purchasing department placed an order, and instead of ordering in kilograms, they placed it in tons. The more you see, the more you uncover, the more you realize it's interesting. In the past, people usually went to jail for creative accounting. It definitely has to be someone who likes working with people.
A chief financial officer can earn an average of 38,000.
I'm here with Jarek. Welcome. What is your position?
My position is finance business partner in an international company. My job is to translate financial language for non-financial people. Financial language is sometimes very complicated. We use some accounting terminology or abbreviations that don't necessarily say much. So, for example, if the financial forecast says that it would be good to increase production because it's profitable for us, because it's a good investment. From a financial point of view, it might add up, but people from the supply chain might say that we have some limitations in the contract, right? Or that a given supplier is not able to produce the required quantity. So I'm kind of standing between these two worlds, and on one hand I say, guys, these are the financial goals, so we have to do it. But if something comes up from the business world or the supply chain that makes it not so simple, my job is to understand it, gather information, translate it back into financial language and say, yes, that's a good idea, but it can't be done, or it will cost X, I don't know, millions or thousands of zlotys.
But still, the work is done on a computer because, like you said, I connect here. I translate for the delivery department, but everything is done on one laptop.
Yes, well, the laptop is usually the command center, right? Because that's where the emails are, that's where the meetings are. I also work with people from all over the world. So even physically, if we work, we physically can't meet face to face. Yes, but whenever I have the chance, I try to go out, walk to the warehouse, to the production line. You'd be surprised how much it opens your perspective and your point of view on finances.
But let's say, is this a later position in your career, or is this where you're just starting, where you started and you're still in this position?
No. I started at the very bottom, right? I was that guy who came to a big company right after college and was basically entering numbers, you could say.
And what did you study?
After accounting, finance, and accounting. So like the initial first job is that you get a small part, let's say, of a company, and you do the bookkeeping, and then you update the Excel spreadsheet. And you report to people like that, usually, which is me now.
So one level higher?
So, one notch higher. I report to the financial director, and he in turn reports to the main global financial director.
Okay, so do you still have aspirations to go further, to climb up the career ladder?
I think so, because that's exactly it. It's interesting. The more you see, the more, let's say, maybe you climb up. Though that's not the right word, but the more you see, the more gets revealed to you, the more you realize it's interesting because you get an even broader perspective.
So you're saying it's never boring, but who is this job for?
It definitely has to be someone who likes working with people, because to solve a given problem, let's say during the month-end closing, we discovered that, I don't know, we went 5 million over budget, right?
That's not a small amount.
Not a small amount. Well, it depends on the company, depends on the budget, right? But still, so you're kind of like a detective, and you have to enjoy being a detective, right? Because you have to check. Your boss asks you, why is it 5 million? What is it? So you might have a rough idea of what it is, but if you really want to find out whether that's how it should be, or if it's something that needs to be fixed, then you have to dig a little deeper. To dig deeper, sometimes you need to talk to accounting. I'm not sure what invoice came in. Sometimes you have to talk to the technical people responsible for the accounting system. Why exactly did this invoice end up in this folder and not in another one? So you kind of have to gather a lot of information from a lot of people. You can't know all of this yourself because you'd have to be a one-man army.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not possible. Some people are like that, but they've worked at the same company for 30 years and are experienced.
But that already sounds really interesting because we've gone through those stages from just ticking off things in Excel to this kind of detective work, which personally excites me. I think the viewers who have made it this far are also interested because it's really about searching, following the trail back to the source and investigation, figuring out why it happened, right?
Exactly.
That's interesting.
And once you go through this whole chain of people and you piece together the solution, that's the first, I would say, the most important skill, that you have to be curious about the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Curious about the job, right? Secondly, you can't be afraid to talk to people. Let's remember that the finance department is the finance department, but sometimes you have to talk to people outside finance. So for them, information given in financial language might mean absolutely nothing, and they'll look at you like you're crazy, right?
Here's a question. Does a lot depend on you? Obviously, yes, but what if something falls apart? Are you personally on the line with your career, your own money, and your budget if something goes wrong in this big corporation's budget because of you?
I mean, I suspect that in smaller companies, there's a bigger risk. Like, I don't know, you're risking your career, right? Let's say, I suspect this happens more often in higher positions where there's more responsibility. And chief financial officers, for example, are held accountable for results. At my level or a similar one, this kind of phenomenon doesn't really occur.
So is there too much stress or what?
I'm not stressed that I'll lose my job over a mistake, right?
Okay.
Because usually, at least in these bigger companies, we're not a one-person finance department, right? We have our boss who takes on more responsibility
Okay.
for those mistakes. However, we actually have a culture in our organization that recognizes we're only human. After all, we're not performing open heart surgery, so these mistakes aren't, let's say, punished. If we actually know what happened and why it happened, and
Then it's still possible to straighten it out.
it's possible to straighten it out, and even if not, well, we're human and we make mistakes, so if we've learned something from it, that's just a plus for the future.
Let's hope the bosses see it the same way you do.
Exactly.
Hopefully there are as few mistakes as possible. Jarko, you mentioned that you started your career path with studies related to finance. Does it always have to look like that?
Not always. I know a few people who are actually successful in finance as a career path, and they didn't earn finance degrees. It's also really worth considering professional certifications. One of these certificates is offered by CIMA. It's called ACMA CGMA, and it really accelerates your career path. It's very recognizable and respected among employers.
Is it a course, a document, or a certificate? How?
It's like this, good question. It's a certificate, so it's actually a title. The whole certification path, let's say, ends with this title I mentioned. But in fact, it's a series of exams. Altogether, there are 9 subject exams, let's say, plus 3 exams that we call case studies, which means you have to demonstrate your knowledge and experience by analyzing and describing a specific case based on a real scenario, for example, a business scenario. So you have to prove that you can use the knowledge you've gained during your studies and through these exams, subject exams, and apply it in practice to a specially prepared case or business scenario.
But do we do this before starting work, or do we do it after we've already started working in business?
There isn't just one way to start. And that's actually great because you can, for example, find out about the certificate at university. There are universities that cooperate with CIMA, and you can decide, okay, I'm going to choose a program that's even co-run, let's say, by CIMA, and I want to start from the beginning. I know this is it, and I'll follow this path already at the university level. You can, just like me, find out about CIMA at your workplace by accident. So basically, you can already work with peace of mind. And actually, you can already be, let's say, a very experienced financier or finance specialist, and you want to further enrich your knowledge or emphasize that you are a specialist by using this certificate. So there are several ways to get started, which is really cool.
Okay, how long does something like this take?
From start to finish, if you wanted to begin like that. From start to final certification, I think it would take about 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
In my case, it was 2 years, but that's because thanks to my studies, I was exempt from some of the exams. That's how it works, that if you're, for example, in certain fields of study, or you already have some work experience, you can check on the CIMA website whether your experience and your sort of educational background, let's say, it allows you to be exempt from some exams, and later you can start, for example, I don't know, not from the first exam or the first level, but you've already passed some of them.
All right, and the cost of doing something like that, 3-4 years, well, that's quite a lot of time and definitely a lot of studying and knowledge that we will have. But what does a certificate like that cost?
More or less, let's say, because it will depend. It depends on how many exams you have, but if you wanted to do all of them from start to finish, I think it would cost about 15,000 zlotys.
Okay.
For everything, but it pays off very quickly because after this certification, as I mentioned, employers recognize it. So realistically, there's a good chance your salary will actually be higher. Some employers too who cooperate with CIMA or realize how professional this certificate is actually finance exams for their employees.
Okay, so how much can you earn from this and how quickly can you recoup your investment? We'll listen to that in a moment as we switch over to Ermina. My friends, we're now with Ermina for an important part of this episode, so listen closely as we'll discuss earnings and what they look like in this industry.
When we talk about earnings in finance, I have to say that it's a very complex topic. Everything depends on the level of the position, on experience, and on which industry a person works in, because in pharmaceuticals, for example, the earnings for a financial controller can be much higher than in the logistics industry.
Does it depend on what we control, what kind of finances and how big they are in the company, or?
It's more about the company's capital, whether it's a high margin or low margin business, and that also affects salaries. But coming back to the point, well, experience is something very important, probably also the location, because depending on the city, the earnings can also differ, but also, for example, having certificates,
Right.
such as CIMA, ICA, or CFA. Referring to the CIMA Salary Report 2025, looking at the results of this report, the average salary for people in the position of financial controller with a certificate, such as CIMA, for example, is around 22,000 before taxes. However, the same person without a certificate may earn 18 or 19,000 before taxes.
Yes, but the amount itself is impressive, like 22,000 zlotys per month. That's what a finance director makes. Who?
Well, of course, finance directors earn the most because that's, I would say, the head of finance. A finance director with a certificate can earn an average of 38,000. Of course, the salary can be much higher, around 50,000, but we're talking about averages. On the other hand, a person without a certificate might earn, for example, 35,000.
But as we can see from the job market, for example, there is currently quite a high demand for finance directors. Is it the kind of job where, let's say, to get there and become a finance director, you really have to be very lucky?
A finance director is a person who manages all the finances, right? So it's not just solid knowledge or specialized knowledge, but also soft skills, team management abilities, strategic competencies, and the ability to look at the business from a broad perspective. So not everyone will become a finance director. Well, these are the kind of projects I would call gems, because after recruiting for many years in finance, it's not like there are a lot of positions or recruitment projects for the role of finance director.
But to earn 35 or even 50,000, like you said, well, after all, you need to have some luck and a lot of experience that you have to gain in finance beforehand. Because it's probably not that simple to become a finance director right away, whether after a certified course or after school. This path is just longer.
Absolutely. Just like I said, we start from assistant positions, whether in finance or accounting, because those career paths can be different. They can move into controlling or focus more on accounting. And then the key position is the chief accountant. It also depends on a person's skills and in which area of finance you want to develop yourself more. Having these certificates also has a big impact on your career path and promotion.
Exactly. I also wanted to ask if a certificate is only about that 16 or 20% salary difference. Or are there also other factors involved in a given position?
Looking at the recruiting searches we've run, I have to admit that the person with the certificate is always the first choice candidate, right? In the eyes of the employer, this is a person who not only has knowledge, as I already mentioned, but also a certain set of competencies needed to find their way in today's world, which is really a dynamic world.
And what about salaries abroad?
In Poland, we have a wide range of salaries for the same position, but abroad, those differences are really huge. In, for example, London or Frankfurt, a person who has a certificate in Poland, and that certificate is recognized internationally, can earn even 100, 200,000 euros, pounds, or dollars per year, of course, but as you can see, that's already a really huge amount. I would say that the pay can be twice or even 4 times as high than in Poland.
So you can also develop abroad. As you can see, certificates offer great opportunities and continuing your education is worthwhile. But is it really like that in reality, like in those charts, that there's really such a big difference in earnings and respect for a person who has that certificate?
Yes, and you can see it, I can say from my own experience that there's clearly a jump in pay. If you change jobs to an employer where you didn't have that certificate, a lot of employers, when posting job offers, mention that having a CIMA certificate is highly desirable or even required. During the job interview itself, it's also much easier for you because the exams during certification are difficult, but what's great about them and what gives you a lot of knowledge is that you can't pass them just by memorizing. Maybe you'll be lucky, maybe you'll actually pass 1 or 2 exams, but because first you have these subject exams that check your theoretical knowledge, but each level of this certification, and there are 3, ends with this exam, the so-called case study, where your theoretical knowledge is practically tested.
Okay, so it's not like some people might think that you spend 15,000 zlotys, get a certificate, and suddenly you're someone better on the job market. No, here, behind this so-called certificate, there's knowledge and opportunities that are worth taking advantage of because we have to acquire them first in order to get that certificate.
Definitely, and I see every day in my work that the problems I encounter or the solutions I propose, I constantly, even subconsciously, go back to the way I probably answered those exam questions. It's cool that you're not just studying to pass the exam, like with a driving test where you later drive in your own style.
Your own way, yeah.
But actually, what this certification gives you and the way of thinking that you adapt or learn during that work and the certification process, it kind of stays with you.
We've already talked about some serious topics like how to work in finance, what trainings, courses and schools you need to go through, how much you can earn from it. So now let's move on to a lighter topic which I always associate with finance, for example, creative accounting. Does it work like that in large corporations too, that despite everything, there's still some scheming going on?
Is creative accounting viewed negatively? Because in the past, people usually went to jail for creative accounting. Like when there were some scandals, let's say, so it's not really in the company's interest, right? Usually when we work for a company, we work in its interest so that everyone can live well, right? And so that the company makes a profit.
But I'm saying, you know, there are some solutions, 3 people are sitting together and you can go left, right or straight ahead. And one of those paths is such that, for example, we save those 5 million. And here we won't save. Do you have such solutions?
Accounting per se doesn't give you creativity. Because you have to follow certain rules. But really, when you meet in a group of 3 people, right? Or with some group of people, then you can come up with some interesting solutions. For example, when you walk onto the production floor, you can think about whether this production process or this production line really has to look this way. Actually, finance people also sometimes come up with good ideas, not just financial ones, but I would say operational ones as well.
I'd be good at that because I enjoy that kind of activity.
Very good.
To come in here, analyze, think, talk to someone, to find some cool solutions which I don't even think are related to finances, but they end up giving a financial impact, like some savings. And have you had similar situations the other way around where instead of saving, you ended up spending too much money on something?
I know one story. It was a typical human error because the purchasing department was placing an order and instead of ordering in kilograms, they placed it in tons. So it turned out that instead of an average-sized package, a truck arrived for unloading, and since it was, let's say, the food industry, the goods expired quickly and stayed in the warehouse for a long time. And in the end, the company suffered financial losses because they had to dispose of the goods. That's why it's so important, especially in large companies, to have these kinds of controls, right? But we're still only humans, so I've also made mistakes with units in my career.
Units, like from grams to kilograms.
Like from grams to kilograms.
Tens of tons.
Not tens of tons, right?
It can be different.
We managed to sort it out, but we really are busy and it's just one difference in one letter somewhere, so it can happen.
But that's cool. And it's also cool that with every minute, this episode was getting more and more interesting to me. Because at the beginning, like I mentioned, bookkeeping, finance, accounting, Excel, sitting at that laptop, which for me is not necessarily my thing. And here we go through all those stages you're talking about, and it's really interesting. So if you could also mention to the young viewers who would like to go into finance and accounting and, for example, eventually earn 40 or 50,000, do you have any advice on how to go about it?
You must be curious about the world. Like, you can work in finance and you can, let's say, confine yourself to your role, to your area. And if you like being a detective, you can even be a detective in finance. And then definitely, first of all, satisfaction is guaranteed when you solve something.
So this is another industry, my friends, where you can graduate from the same program with the same people and in 5 years be in a completely different place.
Yes, definitely.
Great.
You might be in supply chain at one point and in finance at another, right? But let's say a finance business partner in the marketing department. A completely different area, a completely different nature of everyday work. Later, you might end up, I don't know, in some more global or central functions. Later, people usually end up as finance directors.
And that's what we wish for everyone who made it almost to the very end of this episode, to keep developing, to earn those certificates we talked about. If you missed anything, of course, you'll find all the links in the description. Thank you very much for showing us and telling us about a piece of this financial world. You cleared up a lot of doubts that came up at the beginning of this episode, so thank you very much. And you, dear viewers, please give this episode a thumbs up. As always, we covered a different topic this week on the Do Robody channel. Leave a comment on this episode. Right at the very end, let me know if you made it to this point and what you thought. Does the world of finance really look like this, or is it completely different? So, see you in the next episode, and I'll be waiting for all your comments.